Hello everybody, John here again. I said in my last video that my next video was going to be the Prog tag issued by Beer and Vinyl. So that's what I'm here to do now. There's a little bit of a mystery though that the original video that he issued showing the Prog tag and laying down the questions and things seems to have vanished off of YouTube. Bit of a mystery, don't know why that should be. Fortunately though for you, I I copied all the prompts that he'd sort of spelled out in his original video, and that's why I'm going to answer them as best I can now. So the first question was, or first prompt was, favorite progressive release or pickup from 2025. I ummed and ahed about this. Didn't buy an awful lot of progressive rock that was released last year. So the one I'm going to show is a used record that I picked up that I thought was particularly good. And I showed it, I picked it up around about this time last year, I think, when my friend Sean Wheeling come to spend time in Cardiff. We visited a record store here in Cardiff called the Cardiff Record Exchange, and outside he had a box of free records. These are just records that, you know, weren't quite as well preserved as perhaps the ones that he had in the shop. Some had sort of, you know, splits, splits in the seam, or some were a bit dirty. Nothing that couldn't be fixed with a bit of PVA glue and a good deep clean. And I picked up this Be-Bop Deluxe Sunburst finish on the Harvest label. There you go, absolutely free. So that was quite a pickup for me, and I list that as a favourite pickup from last year. There you go. Second prompt. Prompt is most listened to band or artists during 2025. Like I said, I didn't buy much new prog last year, but there is one artist that I spent an unusual amount of time listening to, purely because I just had some good luck in finding him. And that artist isn't necessarily thought of as being a prog artist. But the artist that I've got in mind is, of course, Jimi Hendrix. For some strange reason, and I didn't sort of, do anything to make this happen, some strange reason, I kept on stumbling upon posthumous Jimi Hendrix releases last year. I didn't go out looking for them. I mean, I've shown my Jimi Hendrix collection before on my channel, and these that I'm showing now are just ones that I collected last year that were in addition to the music that I already had, the records that I already had. Yeah, they just kept on appearing at, prices that I was happy to pay for, and so each time they happened, I snatched them up. So I spent quite a lot of time last year really listening to Jimi Hendrix records and enjoying every moment of it. And the very last one, I showed this in my last video, James Griffiths sent me this as a VCLT just a few weeks ago. So there you go, that's the answer to number 2, Jimi Hendrix. Not necessarily prog, is he? But I think Prog Archives have him listed as being prog related or proto-prog. So I'm going to pull that one. So the next question is a prog album that turns 50 this year, and for that I'm going to pull out this. This is Colosseum 2, Strange New Flesh. Again, I showed a Colosseum 2 record in my last video. This is the first one that I've had by them. So not to be confused with the original Colosseum. This is a different band, and it's got Gary Moore in it. Now, to my ears, Gary Moore is very, very present on this album. So much so that it, you know, if you're familiar with Gary Moore's guitar style, it's very much sort of in your face. But hey, don't let that put you off. It's an interesting listen. There you go. Album turning 50. So the next thing is In Memoriam. So an artist that we lost in 2025. I'm going to show this record because it's got somebody on it that died last year, and it's somebody called, let me see if I can find him on the thing. Oh, there he is, just under Lemmy. So if you can see him, there's a chap called Simon House. And Simon House was a sort of multi-instrumentalist, but he's particularly renowned for playing violin, which is perhaps a slightly unusual instrument to be using in this type of music, but that's what he's most known for, and he's played on many artists' records. I'll perhaps put a list here of some of the people that he's worked with. So Simon House, he died last year, sadly. There you go. Number 5. Number 5 is Back Like We Never Left, Show a Great Comeback Album. Well, here's a comeback album for you. This is Beardfish. So Beardfish split up, I think, in around about 2016 or thereabouts. It's no secret they are one of my favourite bands, Swedish progressive rock band. Got a very retro sound going on. Very influenced by Frank Zappa, and they sort of called it a day. I was heartbroken when I found out. And the singer, this guy here, Gerd Sjöblom, I'll talk more about him perhaps a bit later on. There he is there. He went and joined, what's that band? Big Train in the UK. And he also had his own sort of solo thing going on under the banner of Gunfly. But the rest of the band, you didn't hear anything more about them at all until I think it was just at the end of the year before last. They got back together again and released this album, and it's really, really good. Absolutely fantastic album. So there's a comeback album for you. As far as I know, they're still going, and hopefully they should have a new record out soon. There you go, Beardfish. So the next question is number 6. The best hit from a prog band, or at least it should have been a hit. I thought a bit about this. And then I remembered quite an interesting story that I can tell everybody. The track I'm going to nominate for this, to answer this prompt, is from this album. It's a track called Bobby Brown. I don't know if you've heard it before. You know, it's a very kind of lots of satire, very satirical type of sort of typical Frank Zappa song. It charts the rise of an individual that's not a particularly very nice character, and there are sort of elements in the song that I wouldn't repeat here. Not really sort of a song for children or anything like that, but I mean, it's adult humour. No, I'd never heard that song until when I lived in Stockholm in the 90s. There was an American radio station that became very, very big and very, very popular in Stockholm, called Bandit Radio. And it was run and owned by a man called, I can't remember his name now, I'll put that here. And it was right smack bang in the sort of the grunge time. So this American radio station in Stockholm, they were called the Rock Home of Stockholm. they would play lots of grunge music because that was what was really, really popular right then. And they sort of presented in English and everything like that. And there were one or two people that came out of that channel that went on to become sort of B-list celebrities in Sweden, probably still are B-list celebrities to this day. So one is a man called Dave Nurge, I think. He's an American that lives in Sweden. I think he's probably a radio or TV presenter still now, but he was one of the original disc jockeys. Anyway, they used to play Bobby Brown quite a lot, and I think they probably played it 4 or 5 times a day in between various different songs by Nirvana and Pearl Jam and that sort of thing. So that's the song I'm going to nominate. I mean, I don't know if it was ever a hit in America. I wouldn't have thought so. I couldn't imagine it would have got radio play in America. It's certainly got a lot of radio play in Stockholm during the 90s. There you go. And I'd never heard of it until I heard it on the radio. So that's from Shake Your Booty, Frank Zappa. So the next prompt, number 7, is Prog's Got Heart. Show an album with a beautiful ballad. Well, I'm going to hold up this one. This is Marillion, Misplaced Childhood. There aren't many albums that I would say can really bring an emotional response from me. You know, we become sort of desensitized, don't we? And we hear sort of music quite a lot. But I will say, whenever I play this album, if I listen to it in full, it really does succeed in sort of bringing a tear to my eye and a lump to my throat. There aren't many, you know, albums that can really have that strong reaction on me, but this one does. It's very, very beautifully and skillfully made. You go on this sort of roller coaster of emotions if you follow the concept. Anyway, the track that I'm going to say is a beautiful ballad is Lavender, which is the 3rd track on the album. I guess Kaylee was a very popular track. It was one of their biggest singles, I guess. But Lavender, I think, was for me a much nicer song, and yeah, that's the one that I'm going to nominate for this. So number 8, it's quite a long prompt. It says, more than dragons and wizards. Show an album with a social, political commentary or that focuses on a topic. So basically it's asking to show a prog rock song that is, yeah, perhaps has some kind of ethical thing behind it, not just sort of wizards and dragons. I'm going to hold up this album and I'll explain, because the song isn't even on this record. It Bites, they're one of my favourite bands. Fantastic album this is. Now this is on vinyl. Now if I was to hold up the CD or the cassette version of this, and I've got both of those up in my loft in boxes in the eaves, I can't reach them right just now, but the vinyl version doesn't have it, and it's a song called Hunting the Whale, which is all about yeah, whether we should be hunting whales, basically. In large parts of the world, hunting whales has become illegal. I believe there are some places that still do it, but It Bites do a fantastic job in that song of bringing that question to a large audience. There you go. Okay, number 9, Build Your Own. Who are 3 or 4 musicians that you would like to see make an album or play together? Now, I've often said, like one of the greatest progressive rock super bands or super, yeah, acts is the Transatlantic. You've got Neil Morse from Spock's Beard. You got the drummer, whatever his name is, from Dream Theater. You've got the bass player from Marillion, and you've got Ronnie Stolt from the Flower Kings. And I think the thing that sort of, makes those three or those four people fit together is that they were kind of making prog in the 90s when, let's face it, there wasn't an awful lot of prog happening in the 90s, but those four were. And together they put together a pretty good band, and they release some amazing albums. Let's face it, they really, really do. And I've always thought, because I'm not a huge fan of Ronnie Stoll and don't particularly like the Flower Kings very much, but I've always thought if they wanted to replace him with another Swedish musician, they would do very well to consider inviting Rickard Sjöblom. He's, like I said, he's a multi-instrumentalist. He writes superb songs and he's got great vocals, and I think that he would be a great addition. But that's not really what the question is. So I would start off, if I was going to build a band, I would include Rickard Sjöblom, and then I would probably have to think a lot further about who else I would have in the band with him. I may need to come back and answer that question another day. There you go. So number 10, Face for Radio. Great album with horrible artwork. This I found a bit difficult because there are lots of great covers that have got poor albums, but in my experience there are a few that are the opposite way around. I'm going to hold up this one. So this is the Baker Gurvitz Army. I just think that's such a cheesy cover. It's quite a good album in terms of what it's doing. It's got lots of interesting, in prog I particularly like the time changes and things like that. It's got lots of that sort of thing going on because it's got Ginger Baker on drums. But this is just a badly rendered, tasteless, sort of silly cover, really. Surely they could have thought of something a bit better than that. There you go. So that's my answer to that question. So the next question was about a dream biopic. Who would you like to see a story about? Well, in terms of people, I can't think of many that I haven't seen, there's always somebody, isn't there? But I thought a band that I would really like to know a lot more about, and there doesn't seem to be much information about them, and that is this band called Ritual. Last year or the year before, I actually did a spotlight video on their music. They're a Swedish progressive rock band, and one that I've followed since around about 2008. And they're quite unusual in that this album came out, what did I say? Was it 17 years after the last one? And it's not like they broke up and got back together again. They've always been a band. And they've been talking about this release for years. Soon after they'd sort of done touring the last one in 2029 or something like that, whenever it was, they were talking about this, and would give little tidbits of information about how far they'd got in the process and what they were doing next and that. And I just gave up, And then 17 years later, this came out, and it's an amazing album. And I would like to know, I'd like to have a biopic all about this band, and talking about not just the members, because obviously they are interesting people. There's the band. But I'd be really interested to learn more about what do they do when they're not making albums. I guess they all have their sort of regular day jobs. They each have families, that sort of thing. But I'd be really interested to hear, what percent do they commit to this band? What part of their lives do they use to create very sort of intricate, very richly melodic progressive rock, and bring it all together? And why did it take 17 years? And since this is part 1, when will they be releasing part 2? Do we have to wait for another 17 years? You know, these are all the kind of things that I'd like answered in a nice little biopic about the band. So the next question is asking about a, it's not a word I use very often, but a prog whore. Basically someone that spreads themselves around and does lots of different things. It says, he gets around. Show a progger who has their hands in everyone's pie. The one that I'm going to talk about is, and I'm showing another It Bites record here, but there's the vocalist here, John Mitchell, in the middle. Multi-instrumentalist. He seems to just have fingers in everyone's pie. He met John Beck while they were working on a project called Shino. I don't know if they still do that or not. I've heard recently that this version of It Bites is sort of no longer working together. But John Mitchell, he worked with Shino, with John Beck. He's in Frost. He's in loads of other bands. And he sort of seems to be one of these workaholics that seems to do all sorts of different things. And I'll list along here some of the things that he does. But there you go. There's my nomination for that prompt. And lastly, Artsy Fartsy, show an art rock album. There are lots, aren't there? I'm going to show this. This is Todd Rundgren. There are probably people out there that would say Todd Rundgren's not art rock. I don't know. I don't know enough about him, but I do know that I would credit this as being an art rock album. Here you go. So that's my prompt. Okay, everybody. I hope you enjoyed this. Thank you very much, Mr. Beer and Vinyl. And okay, let me know what you would have included in your list, or perhaps you can go ahead and make a video to answer these prompts too. Thanks very much for watching, everybody. See you again soon. Bye.